That was
If there was a
amazing.
chicken pot pie in Vegas, I would probably steer clear of it, frankly. Just doesn't feel right.
There's a lot of good food in Vegas.
There's great food, yeah.
Good
I mean,
food.
I somehow ended up eating chicken fingers and cheese quesadillas because I'm in my toddler food stage of life.
This episode of The Naturalist is sponsored by Premier Research Labs.
This is The Naturalist. In every episode, we're covering the products, ideas, and trends that are shaping the CPG industry.
Or that we just really like.
We are fresh off of SupplySide. Bill and I were there. Great show. The energy was amazing. We were able to see a lot, do a lot, talk about a lot of things, bring various elements of NBJ Summit and Nutrition Capital Network to SupplySide. It was so great to see all the people, right? I just love reconnecting with the SupplySide people.
I know it is. It's really a great event, and it's such a Vegas thing. I mean, it's one of those things where if you're not careful, you go from the airport to the Mandalay Bay, and then several days later you go back to the airport, and you're like, wait. But then you realize, okay, well, there were 50,000, 60,000 people there with me. The show's not that big, but there's like, and then there's 15 restaurants. And there's so much going on, but it's one of those things. And we had events all over that building. We were all over the place with, like you said, with NBJ events, NBJ Summit events, and TN events, and then just the overall SupplySide community, which in a lot of ways, from the dietary supplement perspective, is like the heart of that industry. You've got all the ingredient suppliers, you've got co-manufacturers, you've got the key brands walking the aisles.
So tell me a little bit about the NBJ event.
It was great. A lot of great connections were made, and it was packed. It was really fun, really great conversations at all of those things.
We were able to announce our theme of the summit at SupplySide, and I thought it was so perfect so NBJ Summit will be in July of 2026. Registration is open, and we now have an established theme. And I think the theme is one that a lot of conversations at SupplySide related to, a lot of conversations that we'll have at Expo West will relate to. But the theme is differentiation by design. And we're going to lean into science and storytelling and mission and positioning of your company. And we think that's really important right now in the dietary supplement and nutrition industry. We're continuing to see strong growth and overall awareness that's becoming so much more mainstream. So how do companies stand out in this world of supplements and world of nutrition? And so a lot of the things that came up at SupplySide were around, science, transparency, and what makes a brand, both a finished product brand and this ingredient supplier really stand out. So that was exciting to be able to see like a lot of those conversations start to come to life, and then us talking about what that will look like at NBJ Summit 26.
You're right, because I think differentiation is, of course, important for any brand going out onto the market in any category, but in dietary supplements, maybe especially, differentiation is so crucial because it's pretty easy to start a dietary supplement company. You can just be like, okay, and any of us could start a company tomorrow and make vitamin C. And we could have 500 milligrams of ascorbic acid in a tablet. And so then what's the difference? We might even have them made in the same location. So what's the point? What's the brand ethos, and what's behind my brand? What's how many SKUs do I have? And what's the general target audience? And what's sourcing and so on. So I think differentiation becomes really crucial, especially with dietary supplements. And I had that conversation, and not even in the context of the NBJ Summit theme, but I had that conversation a bunch last week. And what one of the things that came up a lot that doesn't always come up is CROs, so contract research organizations, and the importance of getting clinical trials on products. And I was just surprised how many times I found myself in that conversation last week.
Yeah, and I think that we'll probably come back to that quite a bit throughout next year. And certainly in the context of the summit is clinical research and the importance of science behind products. It's funny because I was just talking about, Adrian, our fantastical wellness trend for this year's and going into next year's trends of like, kind of just this magical, mystical approach to wellness. But at the end of the day, and that's fun and interesting, but at the end of the day, we always come back to science in this industry. And so I think it's interesting to see how companies can have fun with their products and their messaging and their branding, make it relatable and have that emotional element, but truly have it grounded in science and innovations. And I also was struck by SupplySide, how much more of a presence food and beverage topics are having. So we often jump right into the supplement side of things because that's kind of how SupplySide started. But with Food and Beverage Journal and then SupplySide Supplement Journal, they cover everything, right? And I really saw that on the show floor. And some of the things that team has been talking about, Adrian, really mirror what we're seeing around like dairy innovation and functional beverage innovation. So I always love seeing that side of things where these innovations from an ingredient and formulation standpoint, where they really start. And so to see a lot more of that representation from food and beverage ingredient companies that are really exploring both. And I think just this blending of worlds of food and beverage and supplements is really interesting to me right now.
And that's certainly something that we touch on as well in the multifunctional beverage trend. When we talk about how these brands are really finding ways to differentiate themselves through their reliance on science, on dosages, on clinical testing. And that's how they're really innovating, is bringing that piece of integrity to the table. So that's cool that you saw so many of those brands represented there.
Bill, you led a couple sessions. What were they about?
I led one with Erica Kraft, our market research analyst at NBJ. We did a general trends session. Very early. We did that on Tuesday. The show floor opens on Wednesday. So it was pretty early in the process. And we just really laid out. I always, if you hear me talk more than 3 times, you hear me say the what, the where, and the why of the industry, the dietary supplement industry. So we did that sort of presentation. What's selling? Where is it selling? And why are consumers buying it? A session that I really enjoyed though is, SupplySide Fresh is a program that the SupplySide Group is running really to make newcomers feel welcome in the industry. And it's a training program that you can sign up for. You can do online coursework to learn more about the industry. And then at the events, there are SupplySide Fresh presentations. And one of those, I sat on one of those. And so in theory, the audience, they're mostly first timers, they're at SupplySide for the first time. They're new to the industry and they're curious about the industry. And I thought this session was really well done. There was someone talking about formulation, someone else talking about compliance and regulation. There was someone talking about formulation, someone else talking about clinical science around that formulation. Someone else talked about AI and the use of AI in product development. Someone talked about regulation, actually in order. And then I closed it out just with, again, sort of all right, let's look at, this is a $70 billion industry. What's selling? Where is it selling? And why is it selling? So similar presentation, a shorter one, and a very different context. And I really like that SupplySide Fresh context, for, hey, welcome to the industry. What the heck are you doing here? What are we doing here?
What is it? Yeah.
What are you? And it was kind of funny because they put me last, and I thought I actually started that way. It's like, now that you know how to do all of it, let me tell you what it is that we're doing. So.
This episode of The Naturalist is sponsored by Premier Research Labs. Premier Research Labs, PRL, founded in 1987 by visionaries Dr. Robert Marshall and Dr. Linda Forbes, is a trailblazer in professional-grade nutritional supplements, driven by purity, fueled by innovation, and unwavering in its commitment to uncompromising quality. Born from the conviction that not all supplements are created equal, PRL redefined the industry with excipient-free, 100% plant-based formulas, solvent-free capsules, and extraordinary manufacturing practices that honor the body and the earth. With rigorous orthogonal and energetic testing, rejecting over 70% of raw materials that did not meet our exacting standards, PRL sets a premier benchmark for safety, potency, and trust. Guided by our mission to transform global wellness and anchored in the core values of transformation, extraordinary, and community, PRL empowers practitioners, patients, and conscious consumers to pursue optimal vitality, continuing to inspire a healthier, more connected world for today and for generations to come.
That's important. And I like that. I like that framework, especially for supply side, where you are looking at that. I mean, no matter what part of the industry, which category you're in, like it is all about the foundations, right? Of developing the product and entering the market in a way that's going to have lasting impact. And I think getting back to basics is really important for everyone, right? Not just for newcomers, but certainly for all the industry newcomers. And we do see with the growth of the industry, so many more jobs opening up, so many more companies launching. And so there's just this whole kind of onboarding conversation that's really important. And I love that, what Supply Side Fresh is doing with that. The flip side of that was a session that I led, which was CEOs, C-suite, and talking about how leaders are navigating all the challenges of today and how they're leading through disruption and continuing to build consumer trust, build trust of their customers, and ultimately the end consumer of products, compliance and transparency, all these things that are so important. What I loved about that session, I mean, the panelists were incredible. I had 5 leaders representing different parts of the industry, but we talked about everything from tariffs to decision making. And that was one of the things I thought was most fascinating, was how great leaders make decisions and when to act fast versus when to slow down. And there were a lot of, just from a psychology standpoint, a lot of different perspectives on what it means to make decisions that are going to be right for your team. And I just had a lot of food for thought for me that came from that. And Bill, hopefully some things that we can talk about the summit too, which is also, equally about leadership as it is about the industry.
That's interesting. And I love you said disruption. Like that was such the key word a while ago. Now we're talking about differentiation. And where did it come up? And I should credit someone with this concept, but also renovation, all the variations on a theme.
You can credit me, Bill.
Okay. I think Adrian came up with that first before anyone else ever did. And, it is just an interesting, like these ideas of, I really like differentiation. Because of, and I've sort of have circled back to where we started here, but what I like about differentiation is that I think disruption is a lot of pressure. There's a handful of times in the history of industry that something's truly disrupted. It's like, oh my God, that changed everything. And so, and then someone came up, I think Adrian came up with renovation.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
But I like all these words.
And what we talked about on the panel was leading through it, right? Not necessarily being the disruptor, but being able to navigate the various external forces that are coming at us that we can't predict,
Right.
And so I think there's kind of this shift. I agree with you in like having to be a disruptor in this industry versus like kind of being that steady force, right? And being able to lead through those times rather than being the one that defines what disruption looks like. So I feel like we're going to keep our theme. We feel good about our theme.
I think so, yeah.
The bottom
Right.
line. Yeah. I think that an interesting dynamic that we see at supply side is like, if you're going to see something for the very first time, Like, as in, like, I have never, oftentimes I feel like that does come from the ingredient side of things. Like, oh, wow, like you just discovered, like I talked to some people, and I won't like let the cat out of the bag because this is for these companies to do, but like, I've never heard you literally discovered a new ingredient that could enter into dietary supplements that never has before. And so when we think about like first to market ideas, I do feel like it often comes from ingredients.
Yeah, no, it's true. A couple of the ingredients the one ingredient that I just saw over and over again was shatavari. And if you don't know what I'm saying for the listeners, it's the word you probably pronounce as shatavari, but here you heard it here first, shatavari, and not just because Ixorial is such a big presence as a company at supplyside, and they're the makers of KSM 66, and they're introducing SRI 81 right now, which is their shatavari. But Next NXT is coming out with a shatavari, and I saw shatavari here and there in like little booths with shatavari. What I think is interesting about shatavari is it's the intersection of two trends. One in the what, and that's Ayurveda, and two in the why, which is women's health. And so we're seeing those are just things we're seeing continually bubbling up over the last several years. More interest in women's health and more interest in herbs and botanicals, yes, but specifically Ayurveda. And so it's really interesting to see. I think a lot of people are banking on, shatavari is going to be the next ashwagandha, and that's a tall order. I think we're still calling ashwagandha the number one selling botanical, and it's been in the top 3 even in the CBD days. When that was that took over the number one position. So. Being not another ashwagandha is a tall order, but it could be a pretty profound ingredient to hit the market. So that's one that I saw a lot of.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up, Bill, because we have been hearing some buzz around that for quite some time. I know that, we did a session at Expo West about it, but that you really saw this might be kind of the tipping point where this starts to be an ingredient that people, A, pronounce correctly.
I was going to say the
and
same thing.
B, are seeing really in products and understand how it works and what the benefits are. So yeah, I agree that may be the real big thing right now in women's health. Like we might be close to that point.
We might be close to that point. And then the other thing I would say I saw a lot of on the floor was healthy aging. It's just another thing. Sometimes it's called longevity. It's called health span. It's called healthy aging. It's called aging well, whatever you call it. It's that same thing. And, DSM had a fascinating booth. You could enter with a guide only, and they set it up like an art gallery, and you were walked through their booth where they shared statistics about aging. I think, in 2050, I'm not going to try to do what they really pointed out is that a significant portion of the population is going to be over 60. That portion of the population is growing. And then, so how do we increase the, quality of life for people, older and older populations and larger older population. So that was interesting. And the way they did it as this walkthrough, they're like, it's not a booth, it's an experience. Like, okay, fine. But then they walked me through it, and it was really quite something, and that was just maybe the most dramatic example. But lots of talk about healthy aging.
Well, if this were any other industry and you said the phrase, something I loved seeing on the show floor was a lot of healthy aging, I would have been thinking like, wow, everybody must have looked amazing at the show.
If there's one thing you can count on in Vegas.
They did. There were
must
a lot
be that
of
Vegas air.
One of the things I was thinking is like, oh, well, good. I don't know how we take care of that aging population, but it sort of helps balance out AI taking everyone's jobs. So, if we could figure out a way that the older populations just age well and don't have to work, and it says the oldest person on this podcast today. I'm down. I think this is a good plan.
Life goals.
I think they're the oldest people on this podcast.
Oh, if dead makes you old, yeah. The thing about healthy aging is it's almost a lens. Like we call it, it's one of the 22 conditions we track in NBJ, but it's kind of the everything condition. Like there's not really any aspect of healthy aging that isn't also one of the other conditions that we track. There's brain health, there's bone and joint health, there's, there's immunity, there's all these different conditions. And then if you take all of those out of healthy aging, you kind of don't have anything left. So it's really interesting. The whole notion of healthy aging is just, in some ways, it's just one lens through which to look at general wellness,
I was going to ask if something stood out from a condition standpoint, or even for a while, I felt like we were seeing a lot around kind of DNA, like the science behind DNA and like extending and health. So I'm just curious, Bill, if there were any specific innovations that felt fresh in the healthy aging space.
I can't say no for sure. I didn't see any. I just saw people talking about healthy aging, bringing in gut health, probiotics, and kind of the same ingredients, the same concepts we've been talking about, but just really driving it home that we're talking about healthy aging. And one of the slides that I presented with Erica was a survey we did recently. Just in September, we surveyed people, and Gen Z is the generation most concerned about healthy aging. Millennials come second, Gen X comes third, and boomers are just like, whatever, hell with it. It's too late now. And you could really see that stair step down from like a lot of concern to a little concern to not much concern at all as you age, as our population's aging. So it's really a big topic, I think. If you can do healthy aging and realize that Gen Z is your target audience, then you're in great shape. You've got a long-lasting business model.
That was great. I feel like I was there. Thank you. Thanks for being here, Bill.
That's good.